Well, greetings and welcome to another episode of Lightbulb Moments, episode 121. Thanks for joining us. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to check out past episodes, including a great one that was from 2 weeks ago. We'll talk about in a moment. And whether you're listening in live or listening to the recorded version, we're glad you're with us today. I'm Tom Kuhn. I'm the host and curator of Lightbulb Moments. I'm also CEO and founder of Qnity. Remember, money isn't the most important thing in life, but it is reasonably close to oxygen on the got to have it scale. At Qnity, we help by making the new rules simple, visual, and actionable, applicable so you can go from being overwhelmed, confused, or just maybe living in a world of complication into a clear path towards prosperity. In terms of clear path today, that's going to be a focal point of our conversation, which I'll get to in a minute. Remember to prosper, manage your ATM, the three currencies we have in life: attention, time, and money. And it's not lost unless you're spending your precious time with us today. So thank you. We love hearing from you. If you have any ideas about a light bulb moment of your own, or if you have a guest suggestion, please let us know. Our last episode was with Sam Bricato, and you definitely got to check out this episode. Even if you watched it live, you should listen to the recording of it. So I'll have someone from the team post the link over to YouTube in the chat here. But it was a very dynamic conversation about a lot of different topics, and I just went away feeling sort of filled from new ideas, inspiration, and just a lot of great things to come out of a conversation from someone I would describe as a great role model as it relates to lifelong learning and so many other areas. Today, we have some special guests with us. Candice Gliatto is joining us, as well as Colleen Lamirande. Colleen, a little bit later when I give you the mic, you'll have to correct the pronunciation. My apologies. So we have someone from north of us up in Canada, which is Colleen. And we have Candice Gliatto getting up early, as she does many times on our Wednesday Lightbulb Moments, to join us. She's out on the West Coast. So we'll get to them in a few minutes. At Qnity, we help provide financial wellness for students, employers, and leaders through our Money EDU for students, our Money Pro for professionals, and then our Money SBO, which is for small business owners and those that think and act like owners. Now, before we really get into some light bulb moments for today, and I give you some things that are top of mind and get into the episode, I want to just suggest that this is we are at the point where we are closing submission for the latest round of the compensation study. And it's been open for a few months, but we're now at the point where we've got to close it and start doing the tally. And we've had great response. We could use more response. And there's two simple steps to it. And maybe you've completed one of the two steps. Maybe you've completed neither. But this is the last push to get great participation, because we know the more participation we have, the more relevant the results. So I urge and encourage you that if you haven't submitted either the survey or the W-2 data, if you need instructions or if you need a link, we can also put that in the chat. But this is sort of the last reminder before we close this out. So we'd love to get great participation. What will come out then, and starting in August, is we'll start to release the findings. And I think there's going to be some really cool findings based upon what I've seen so far. So definitely that's a call to action for this week, is to, if you haven't submitted your data and or taken the survey, please see if you can do it in the next 48 hours. Thank you very much. My light bulb moment last week was really about summer vacations, lifelong learning, and AI. And it really, with Sam as just a terrific guest. This week, it's going to be all about execution. And now it's very top of mind for us because we just completed yesterday 2 days of our first execution by Qnity workshop. And Candice and I will speak to that a little bit. And then Colleen is joining us because she was an Impact Award winner as it relates to execution. But anyway, so when we look at execution, and this is actually a cover of the new workbook, which we refer to as the gritty art of getting things done. Certainly execution, what we have found is the way to make it simple, visual, and actionable is to provide grid-based tools, tactile tools. And we introduced several of those in May at the Phil. And then during the workshop over the last couple of days, we introduced more, as well as we introduced some tool pads that really would allow people to have a great execution rhythm in their company, as well as assessments and other tools to really help you go from knowing to doing and ultimately have a great second half of the year. All right, so I'm going to invite Candice and Colleen to the conversation with me. And good morning.
Good morning.
Colleen, thanks for joining us today. And again, I mentioned, why don't you just for a quick moment, describe the company you work with and a little bit about your role.
I work for the Verde Salon group. We're up in the north here in Canada. It's actually plus 30, going to be plus 30 today. So it gets hot here once in a while. And we have 2 salons, and then our owner also owns an Verde Institute. I'm the director of education and business development. So I get to play a lot of different roles and wear many different hats as far as hiring and training our new talent and guiding our leadership team and implementing initiatives.
Perfect. Great. Candice, you're a familiar face. Not only are you the president of now 2 locations of the Citrus Salons out in the Bay Area, but you're also Qnity coach, educator, and a director of training and development. So how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Excited to be here.
So in framing the conversation, there was really 3 different sort of things that pointed to where I thought this would be a good and an important conversation today. Number 1 is that we are 3 days away from a significant milestone for anybody that has an eye on execution. We're just about ready to end the first 6 months of the year, end a quarter, end a season. And this is really a great time as we look at making this transition for the first to the second half of the year to kind of call out and not let it just kind of be like vapor that, okay, we seamlessly go from one week to another. It's creating that. And so we're at an inflection point. And I wanted to kind of call that out. Number 2 is execution and getting stuff done is very top of mind for all of us at Qnity, Candice and myself included here, because we just spent 2 days with a bunch of great companies working on their execution. And then thirdly, and this is going to be a segue over to you, Colleen, is that you and your company won an Impact Award for execution. And so out of a lot of different accounts that we looked at that submitted an Impact application, yours kind of stood out. Why do you think yours stood out in terms of from an execution standpoint? Maybe share a little bit about your before and after as it gets to getting things done.
Yeah, thank you. So very cool. Before and after, I think that's probably what made us stand out is the before was kind of terrifying. Like we had a ton, terrifying is the word. We had a ton of people who were so creative and we came up with the most unbelievable ideas. And then we kind of like looked around like, okay, who's going to implement these ideas now? And it was overwhelming. We didn't know where to start. So we kind of were growing organically, but nothing was like methodical. And at the end of the month, it would be like, oh, I think we did well. Like Rob would be, again, terrified listening to this, but we know we did well. But it's like, if we would have planned ahead of time, what could we have actually accomplished? And so that was kind of the before, and the after was, not only bringing on a Qnity coach and using the tools, but making sure we hired, the right people for the right jobs. And we used the leadership team we already had. We used their abilities and what they were best at and what they loved, rather than just like forcing them into a box where we're like, you have to do this. But it's like, maybe they're not great at it, and that's okay. They're great at other things. So I think we were able to do quite a few things over in the after that led us to being part of this award, which we're very grateful for.
So if you were to score yourself, I'm going to ask Candice to do a little scoring too. So score how you did at execution. I mean, we talk about the different gaps and what have you. What would be your before score on a 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest?
Yeah, I would say our before score on execution would have probably been between like a 2 and a 4.
Oh,
2 and a 4.
all right. So now with complete honest reflection here,
Mhm.
how did you do in the first 6 months of the year? Give yourself a score. I know we got 3 days left. You can still do a ton in 3 days, but we're pretty close. How would you objectively score your execution for the first 6 months?
We're an 8, and I'm giving myself like a tough score, but I'm going to say we're a solid 8.
And what practices for you made the biggest differences, in terms of, let's look at it from like a leadership communication standpoint?
Yeah. So, like I said before, instead of assigning tasks to different members of our team, because most of our leadership team until last year were all hairstylists. So a lot of hairstylists are very right-brained, and so a lot of the tasks that need to be done as in leadership roles are not necessarily all right-brained. So one thing we decided to do was stop forcing things and hire somebody who is very methodical and very likes making lists and accomplishing things, and they're a doer and not just like not just a thinker. So that was one of the big changes and kind of the aha moments that we had.
Candice, so here we are at the 6th month, and you've had, I think execution is one of those things that, like all parts of your business, nothing's static, everything's dynamic.
Yeah.
Things kind of ebb and flow. How were your first 6 months from an execution standpoint, Candice?
Well, you mean what would I rate myself or my company?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have all the tools and practices in place, and we have for a while. So we do have strong execution in our company. We're very methodical about our planning. We were talking a little bit earlier, it ebbs and flows. And so as we've been catching our breath around, some rearrangement in leadership and in staffing, we went down a little bit. I would say we're probably a 7. We've been 10 before because we're really committed to all the methodologies. But it sure felt good to get in there and create a new plan, over the last couple of days. So I think we're gonna shoot back up to 9 or 10.
Well, and I think it's a 7 or an 8 is pretty high, especially when I think the data that we saw was, I think it was only 13% of companies execute their plan.
Yeah.
So that type of rating would be like a 1.3 on a scale of 10 to 1 to 10. So you're both up there. So that's a little bit about the past, first 6 months. And how are we feeling about the next 6 months? Starting with you, Colleen. Do we have a plan for the next 6 months? Or do we have a plan? And I'll let you set the time. Okay.
Yeah, so we're lucky enough to have a marketing team, and I feel like a plan a lot of times kind of starts with figuring out your marketing initiatives and what you want to accomplish, and then kind of trickles down into what does that look like for operations and education and all the other gaps as well. So we sit with our marketing manager and come up with our plan. So actually, it was just this week that we planned out season 6, 7, and 8. And so now we have everything on our 8 seasons, which really just lays out your entire year for you. So we feel pretty solid about what we're going to be doing for the rest of the year.
So the next 6 months, I mean, if you're seasons 5 through 8, then you're pretty well planned out through the end of the year. Now, I see the smile on your face. How does that make you feel to have that on paper, have a plan in place? I mean, talk about how that feels.
Yeah. So, I mean, number one, it's a relief. I think a lot of people get to summer and they just want to just like take a deep breath and be like, oh, okay, it's over. And then you're like, wait a second. Now we're getting into, it's still going to be holiday time, and holiday is going to be busy. So what are you going to plan for before? So it's a huge relief. And the last few years, I was talking about this before, a lot of salon owners, I think, have the idea like, oh, October, November is when it really starts to get busy. And I think you think of that because you're so busy at Christmas. And the last few years, we've had a bit of a dip there. So we've actually planned ahead to make sure that that doesn't happen in, October, early November, for that little gap before the Christmas rush starts. So that feels good.
So how did you, sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we forget that, oh, last year, I mean, I remember it's like, doggone it, why didn't we think ahead of
Yes.
time after holiday
Yeah.
that in January we'd blow out any inventory? And if I find myself in January, it's like, doggone it, we didn't think about that because we forgot to really put a
Mhm.
note to ourselves and we
Mhm.
sat down to plan to remember it. Have you addressed that?
Yes. So before before we would say, hey, we got to make sure we remember this next year. And then somebody's like, somebody else wrote that down, right? And then the next year we're like, oh crap. Nobody wrote it down. So having the 8 seasons has been the best because we can literally, I just open up my book. I have a little folder of all my different tools. And the first thing I open up is 8 seasons. And so I go to 8 seasons and I write down like, hey, in this season, remember that you're going to have to do something because it starts to get it drops. The busyness in the salon is going to drop for a little bit before Christmas comes. So you can plan for it.
Yeah, it's a great example. It's such a small step too, is like, capture the information at the time so that when you sit down and you're in the heat of the planning, you don't forget and you can do something about it. So Candice, so you've got your plan how far out?
Through the end of the year. Through the end of the year.
And how you feeling about that?
Oh, I feel great. It was interesting too, going through the process, of creating initiatives, delegating them. I had a huge light bulb moment. I'm writing down all the who's going to do all the work, noticing my own name and my GM's name coming up maybe too many times. And then it was like, wait a minute, let's scale this back. I think my primary focus needs to be preparing somebody else to be able to help with these things. And so just to organize the work in an order that makes sense and that is sustainable, it's a great feeling.
Is there something in the second half of the year that you're particularly excited about in terms of an initiative? And I'm going to ask you the same thing in a minute, Colleen.
Yeah, I got a couple of things that are related and exciting. I'm going to be we're doing a little remix on our education program, just the logistics of it and updating the content. So that is a huge project that could be pretty daunting if we didn't break it down and be very strategic about it and create small steps. And then also we're reorganizing our leadership team. We've got somebody moving out of state, and we're really going to take a fresh look at how we approach our business and really just aligning roles with functions and greatest needs and strengths. And I'm super excited about it. Usually that type of stuff, like, my gosh, like an important leader in your business, leaving, of course we don't want that, but feeling like it's going to be okay and I've got a plan to get it covered. That's a big difference in how that could feel because we have a plan.
How about you, Colleen? Something in the second half of the year in particular that's you're especially excited about?
Can I have 2?
You can have 2, of
Okay,
course you
perfect.
can.
One has got to be Congress, because Congress is coming back with a Verde. And so there's a few of us from the School Net Salon heading out to Congress. Great place to network and get some education. So very excited about that. But the other one is, like I said, we've set up a promo for our guests in order to hopefully, it's like a book your next 2 appointments promo. There's a lot around that, but to hopefully be able to look at October, November, like after they're finished and be like, hey, we solved our problem from the last, 5 years of being open. So that will be exciting.
Nice. So, I have a lot of ahas over the last couple of days here and I've studied execution and planning and strategic planning, operational planning, financial planning, and all that for a very, very long time. And, Sam Briccato is a great role model in terms of lifelong learning. And I also like to think of myself as a lifelong learner too. And so I was really learning a lot over the last couple of days, and some of the things that maybe I learned at a different point in life or I forgot or something like that. But Candice, I thought I heard that, 1 hour planning saves 10 hours of execution. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, 1 hour planning saves 10 hours of doing. So it was, I was just looking up who said that, because it wasn't me. Dale Carnegie said that. I just think that is so it's a very significant thing to consider when it comes to making sure you're prepared, because time is very valuable.
And why is it, Candice, from your standpoint, why is it that so few people plan? So few companies?
It's interesting. I think some people feel maybe a little bit worried that they can't predict what's going to happen, but the reality is things are going to happen to them. And if they're prepared, it's going to feel a lot better than if they're not. And then the other thing, I think when we write down, sometimes we write down on paper all these things that we have whirling around in our heads. And then we look at that list and we go, oh my gosh, that's a lot. And I mean, that happens even when you're building out your calendar, that happens, that feeling of overwhelm. And then it's like, hold on, stick with it. Let's break it down into small steps. And then all of a sudden it feels achievable and doable, because it is. But I think that those are the things, just honestly, fear and maybe a feeling of unpredictability.
Yeah. And I look internally, I even look at myself and our company and look at the opportunities we have, because our planet has ebbed and flowed. And, one of the things in looking at Qnity, for example, is that we have a very dynamic model. I mean, we've rapidly moved into new markets and to new different avenues, going in the data business, adding a brand new conference. So when you have got a lot of change and you're pushing the envelope with new products and new programs, which over the last 3 years, we've really done that. It's, I try to give myself a little bit of grace in terms of being self-critical in terms of my own planning, but I do have a really big aha, and I actually had this about 10 years ago. And that is that even if you have the tools and have the knowledge, there's just something about facilitation that gets you unstuck. And I remember 10 years ago, I want to hire somebody. I want to have somebody coach me on how to use our own system, and there's some truth to it. The value of independent third-party facilitators that's trusted, that creates a detached environment, is really powerful, and that was a big aha, Candice, that I had. Even you and I sitting in the room, I mean, really, in certain cases, being the author of the tool, but just having that space, having that time carved out, having someone facilitate is super powerful. And before I move back over to Colleen, any other comments about that, Candice?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Qnity trainer and educator. I am highly familiar with all these tools. Heath and I worked together to develop the workshop. And when I was sitting in that room the last 2 days, I was also wearing my citrus hat. I was wearing my salon owner hat and my Qnity hat. And, even being that deeply familiar with things, just having somebody else really hold up the mirror and walk you through that process is really powerful. So I'm like super excited to get back in the salon today and launch this to my team. I'm like really inspired and kind of reinvigorated.
Colleen, are you the one that facilitates for your company? Are you the one that, does the facilitation, gets everybody to show up, gets them prepared? What roles do you have internally to facilitate the process, and who fills the roles?
Well, number one, Jody bosses me around first, and I love that. I have a coach who kind of knows me and knows what I need and is supportive. And Roberta and I actually went to our first Qnity event in 2018. And it was like a 5-year anniversary when we were at the Phil from our very first Qnity event. And we were so excited. And we got back to the salon and we were like, let's set 8 seasons again. And it just fell away. So when we got a coach, that was when everything really changed for us. So I work with Jody. And then I meet with our leadership team every week on Tuesdays. And then we plan out ahead on our 13-week planners. We have one meeting where our other leadership members join us as well. We give out all like the 9 grids and I say, this is what you're in charge of. Have it uploaded to Trello, which is just a way of communicating with your team. Upload it to Trello, and then we're all on the same page. So I kind of keep everybody in line, which is amazing for me because I'm a creative brain. So I'm able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've studied different planning and execution systems, small business planning and execution systems for 30 plus years. I've seen the best, I've studied, I've been part of it. And I think that what we wanted to do is to create a very approachable system that makes it easy for people to do it. And so it's a segue into execution and breaking it down into components. So let's peel the onion a little bit. And ultimately, in terms of how we go through our execution program, is distinguished between the plan and the do. So we're primarily talking about the planning today, but you gave a great segue into the do. So you got your plan. What are the rituals to make sure that it gets done? The do, I'll go to you. I mean, because Colleen, you said you've got that weekly ritual. So you got the plan done, and the do is weekly ritual and.
Yeah, and I really have to show this very quickly because this was a big hit at the Phil. Highly recommend you keep yourself organized. And so how I was able to do that, I didn't put it on my back screen, is like I said, I have my 8 seasons. I have this little folder, 8 seasons at the front. Then I line up all my 5 functions.
Oh,
so
nice,
5 functions, 8 seasons to 5 functions. Then I have space for all my 9 grids and planning. And then I have all my 13-week planners. So I'm able to like plan out, and it's in my one book. So papers aren't everywhere. Yeah, and so how it works is we come up with initiatives with our senior leadership team. We go over them and get everybody's our other leadership input on them. Then we put names to every, I'm so used to your names to every number, Candice, but a name to every every initiative that we want to do. And then they're in charge of creating 9 grids and just coming up with a plan. And from there, I work with the other team members on creating their 13-week planner to make sure everything is going to be done in time.
I love that.
How about you?
I was just bragging about your binder.
It's a little thing, but I'm like, it's a hit.
Yeah,
we've got, and we're going to have some more ways to help bind and package and keep it all together. So stay tuned, everybody, on that. But Candice, so the plan's done. What about the do? What does the do look like for you?
Yeah, so we create the plan. Usually, just my GM and I create the plan. Just because we have eyes on all functions of the business, and so we can really be selective about what we choose to take on, because that's definitely part of it. You don't want to put initiatives on there for the sake of putting initiatives on there. You want to make sure that they're going to be high return projects that you're working on. And so we do that part. We present the plan to our leadership team, and then we help them create their 13-week plan. Because it does take some guidance. And then from there, it's just like Colleen said, it's a weekly accountability check-in that is, did you get your tasks done, or how are your projects coming along? And also creates an opportunity for addressing those things that come up, things that we can't plan. One of my big light bulbs this weekend was, Heath saying, hey, you can really only successfully plan 30 to 40% of your day, because we've got our regular job, and then we've got all the other things that are going to come up. And so, making sure that the team has the opportunity to pivot with purpose and strategy, instead of running around with their hair on fire, making sure everybody's clear of what to do next. And the weekly meetings for my team, they're vital. Carrie Perkins taught me that, 5 years ago. And every time I've strayed from that, execution strays a little bit. And so it's really important for our team to keep that consistent communication. And it's not a big time suck either. They're 15-minute huddles just to check in, and absolutely worth every minute.
So from the planning standpoint, there is, it's kind of like the word budget. The word budget and plan, there's some similarities that create some pet peeves around me. I've gone on certain rants about budget, and so somebody says, let's get our budget done. And I'm like, which budget? Do you mean your capital budget, your financial budget, your spending budget, your sales budget? So budget is a word to unpack. To be successful at is to really understand that it's multidimensional. What type of budget are you talking about? Budget for an event? I mean, the word itself has multiple use. Same with plan. And there's a strategic plan, there's a financial plan, there's an operating plan. I think that, the missing thing that I've seen for years, and the whole reason why a lot of these execution tools and concepts like 5 functions and 8 seasons were created is most are really lacking an operating plan. You know, the operating of the business, which is strategic plan looks out a little bit more into the future. It's much more of a zoom out. The kind of planning that we're talking about is the gritty art of getting things done in an operating plan. Colleen, for you and your sort of the do aspect and executing your operating plan, any other best practices that you have to make sure that things get done?
Honestly, it becomes like holding myself capable, as Jody would say, holding myself capable, and same with the other team members. And I think the check-ins are what are most important, because sometimes people can trail off, and just having the check-ins. And I feel like, you know, something simple like a highlighter. I have like my favorite colored highlighters, and every time I complete something like a task on my 13-week planner, I just give it a big strikeout, and it's just like the best feeling ever. So sometimes it's the little things.
So, Candice, one of the things we talked about the last couple of days, and you alluded to this about a couple minutes ago, is who's involved in creating the plan.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, you've got the entire team, you sort of have the execution team, and then you also have really the team, which is a smaller team that creates the overall plan and vision. So let's dive into that, Candice, a little bit more. So it's basically, is it like you and Ashley that really set the overall initiatives in the plan, and you keep everybody out of the room? Just, I mean, describe how that works for you guys.
We don't keep everybody out of the room, really. It's not like a big secret thing. Although I will say we leave the salon to do that. We do that we do it 4 times a year, and we do it at my house because we don't want any interruptions. But it's not because it's a secret, because it's actually the opposite. So what we do is, one, we make our plan, and then we present it to the people that are going to be involved in executing and implementing the plan, and we get feedback, you know, and those people are the people that are on the salon floor every day, and they have a different level of understanding of what's going on in the business that maybe Ashley and I don't, or a different perspective that Ashley and I might not have. And so their buy-in is really, really important, and their not just their buy-in, but also, you know, their feedback. Usually they'll have a couple things to say that are aligned with what we have planned, and it just makes the plan that much stronger. And then we also, and I think this is worth saying, you know, our team that is not involved in executing the plan, you know, our service providers, our front desk people, they want to know what's going on too. And in the past, we've only shared the things that like directly impact them. Oh, there's a class this day, or a team meeting this day, or a new product launch this day. What we're learning about leadership today is they want to know everything that we're working on. And you know, as they were sharing this with me, I go, well, my goodness, don't I have the best way to share that with you? I just pull that thing off the wall and say, here's what we're doing. They love it. And then they see a lot of the value in what their leadership team is doing to keep the business growing and moving forward, and which ultimately benefits them. So it's a great communication tool as well.
So Colleen, I broached this next topic with some risk. Given that our my friend and your colleague Roberto has joined us today, so I'm gonna put you on the spot, and also share, like, you know, so in my role within Qnity, my role is part of it's to be the visionary, and to be spotting opportunities, and to be jumping in on opportunities. But at the same time, I understand that the train needs to keep moving, and you can't take these random tours off the tracks or whatever. So I asked this question with some risk, but I know both of you well enough that I can ask this. So let's say Roberto comes at you with this just great idea, and you've got this plan laid out for the next 6 months, and he's very passionate about the idea and wants momentum. How do you deal with it? Roberto's probably just folding his arms and leaning back, just waiting for the response.
So a couple parts to that. I mean, is this something that I'm on board with? So I think that's the first thing is
Okay.
Roberto's very like top level and works in a few different businesses. So first thing is, and I know Roberto can appreciate this, is I always am one to challenge and say, like, is this something that you feel is really important, and give, I don't really like using the term devil's advocate, but giving some different ideas on both sides. But in the end, if this is something that I'm fully on board with and I completely agree with, it's something that I'm going to bring to our other leadership team, and we'll make it happen. Maybe I'm not. Is there any other part of that? Maybe be more specific.
No, I think you answered the question great. Yeah. Yeah, I think you, and let's just say you're not on board with it. You just push back and say, geez, we've already got the plan done. And, maybe haven't seen the cost of ATM in this, or play it out just a little bit further.
Yeah, so I think there's different relationships with different leaders and within businesses. And Roberto and I have the type of relationship where we can just shoot straight and say exactly what we're thinking. And we don't have to use all of our, you don't have to be as worried about the other person and how they're going to take it, because we're just honest. So I think he can appreciate where I'm coming from. And if I can say, what, I think this would be a better spot, or I like this part of the idea, this is why, and this is why I don't think this will work. Usually he'll just say, fine. if I've well,
I know there's a tremendous amount of mutual respect between the two of you. And, with that type of success in the first 6 months of the year, obviously you figured it out, which, how to remain visionary, how to remain nimble, how to remain, how to disrupt when it's time to disrupt, and how it's, and also the importance of staying on course. So.
Yeah, I would say Roberto has definitely taught me a lot of things that I know. And sometimes our roles reverse from when we first started in the company. So I very much appreciate that. I actually didn't know he was on the call.
Well, now, Candice, so you've got Ashley, okay, who's your right-hand woman. And, she's strong, and we want strong, everybody on the team. So when do you deviate from the plan? And is Ashley ever the one that says, hey, I think we need to change the plan to take advantage of this opportunity? Is that coming from you, other members of the leadership team, or who mixes it up?
Yeah, I think we both mix it up a fair amount. And, I think it's okay to do that. It's about mixing it up with intention and with a plan, and having a really clear plan, like from initiative down to each task, having it all written down and seeing it. I think, I get excited. I guess I'm more the one that's like, oh, let's do this. And, I need Ashley's support, and she's probably going to end up doing a lot of the heavy lifting around it. And if I can look at like her planner and see that it's already packed, it's definitely a good reality check for me to make sure that I'm not like overwhelming her, because it's all written down. I'm like, ooh, all right, maybe you won't be able to take that on right now. That was a big aha during the workshop that one of the teams that was there had, and they're like, oh, I think she's maxed out with this project. So I try and keep it under control. But again, if you add something, then it's all written down. It's a good reminder that you might have to take away something if you do that.
Yeah, and you had shared that, in terms of how much time you need to leave as a buffer and how much time really you have to work on the plan. Was it like 30-70? Is that what we came up with?
Yeah, it was just a statistic that Heath shared about, really you can only plan 30% of your day, because the rest of it's going to just kind of happen to you. As somebody that gets excited, I'm a doer, and I get excited and I want to make it happen. And I think it's important for me to remember that, because then I could work 24 hours a day if I wanted to, but I don't always want to do that. So
guys, we're going to move into wrap up here, but before we do, kind of one last final word to each of you. So Colleen, is there any question that I should ask you that I didn't, or do you have any closing remarks?
Maybe one last thing that I was able to share at the Phil that really shows how important execution is like what you can actually accomplish if you do execute. And we were able to like hire 6 new service providers, an assistant manager, a full-time content creator. Like we were able to do so many of these things that you hope that you can do. And it happened within like about a year of really getting on top of execution. So it's important. And so that would be my last words.
Those are some great examples and some great results. Yeah. How about you, Candice? Any question that we didn't but should have asked you, or any other final words?
I think you asked me everything. Final words, I know I've already said this, but just kind of walking away from spending 2 days in this workshop, my goodness, the power of having of being out of your business and looking at it with this high level perspective, and having somebody guide you through the process. Even though I'm so familiar, this is like, I just can't stop thinking about this. Even though I'm so familiar with this content, oh my gosh, being taken away and just like walked through it has been so powerful. So yeah, I really enjoyed the last couple of days.
Well, and just by way of announcement for everybody here today, we will in September be gathering again. Perfect timing. I believe it's 2 weeks before the start of the fourth quarter, which is also 2 weeks before the start of season 7 and 8. Is we're going to be doing the workshop again. We just decided on the spot that we just have to do this again, and the timing's great. So for those of you that want to join us in the Twin Cities, it's an easy flight here to Minnesota. It's a quick Uber ride from the airport to the venue. It's a great venue. So September 18th and 19th, if I got that right, someone let me know. Are those the right dates, Candice? 17, 18, and 19. So we're going to be doing it again. So if you want to work on your plan and you want to do it in an environment with other people that are planning and learn and use the tools, join us. I don't have a slide on that or anything. We haven't really published it yet, but JP just put in the chat that you can contact info@Qnity Inc. for inquiries about that. So Colleen, I think you're a three-peat. I think this is your third $1 million light bulb. So let's give Colleen a virtual round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give her a little shout out in the chat, if you would, for her generosity in joining us this morning. Thank you. Candice, I don't even know how many of these that you've gotten. We might be at the point where we're just going to have to get you, I don't know, a string of lights and whatever. But Candice, thanks for joining us. I know you just spent a few days here in Minnesota. You just got back late last night, and but I'm super grateful to both of you. Let's give Candice also a virtual round of applause.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, let's wish both of you a great season 5. A great quarter 3, and a great holiday weekend. And Colleen, refresh my memory, isn't July 1st a Canadian holiday?
July 1st, Saturday it is. All
right. So let's all have a great holiday weekend, regardless of what country you're in. All right. We are on next week, by the way, and I'm super excited that we are on next week, because I want to keep that momentum high going into the second half of the year. Let me see what else I have for you. I don't think I have anything else to share other than reminder, last chance for being part of the compensation study. I want to thank our sponsors, Lightheart Sanders, as well as Ally Health, which is offered through a new division we created called Benefits by Qnity. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can just search Qnity and you can find us. And we love hearing from you. We love it when you show up. We're so glad to see many of these familiar participants that join us. Thank you. I hope you got a lot out of this session. I'm going to stick around for a moment and jump into the chat. The rest of you, again, have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us, and all the best.